It's Friday.
That's right.
We had to come in with music.
We have to. I like that riff better every time I hear it, man.
You know, it's one of those, if people aren't familiar, that little intro tune is my cover rendition of AC/DC's song Overdose. You can hear the full thing on my SoundCloud with Seattle Joe singing. And it's, dude, it's like one of those, my favorite AC/DC tunes tend to be those deep B tracks that most people aren't familiar with.
Yeah.
And Overdose is one of those. So I'm like, if I'm going to cover an AC/DC tune, I'm going to cover one that is probably less popular. You know, everybody does Back in Black and You Shook Me All Night Long.
Yeah, I mean, come on. Right. So, I mean, come on. Like that's so high school weight room.
Yeah, but there's, you know, the cool thing about AC/DC is, you know, they get made fun of because they play like essentially the same 3 or 4 chords, which is pretty true. Mm-hmm. But it's where they place the notes that makes it so interesting. Like even that rhythm, you know, it's mostly all power chords. It's B, D, down, A, right? It's just the syncopation and the place where the chords fall that just makes it so cool, so catchy, right? So simple, but it's like it's just like slightly unpredictable, and that's what makes it interesting, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. So how's your Friday been, man? We're gonna do Q&A, gentle listeners. So pop it in there. Yep.
It's been a good Friday. I worked through some of the first book in the Nickmegan Ethics with my students today, right? And they turned in their paper on the Republic, so we're gonna spend the weekend with that. It is my high school students, my children's homecoming weekend. And one of my sons, we will find out tonight whether he's the homecoming king or not.
Awesome.
Yeah. But I told him if I have to go to the stupid homecoming game and he doesn't win, I will never forgive him.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah, so pressure.
He better be campaigning. Yes, Cormac. By all means. Family life in action there. I had my son, my younger son was checking in with me.
That's what it's all about, man. Callum
totally, man.
Callum has a nice comment. He says, "I just left the Matt Frad stream for you guys, so you know where my priorities lay." What's Matt talking about? Should I go? Should I go watch that stream?
Yeah.
I was on Matt's show a while. I was on Matt's show twice. It's a great show. Jim, we got to get you on there, man, because you would be an awesome guest for that show.
It'd be fun. My boy Andy Swafford's been on there, right?
Yeah. Oh, that's right. We were supposed to talk to him.
He'll come on anytime.
I know. I was emailing with him, but I totally dropped the ball. I do this all the time. It's my fault. Tell him that I'm sorry, and let's reorganize that. That would be cool. Yeah.
Tell him you're sorry, and you want him to punish you.
Apparently, he probably can because you guys do. You roll together, don't you?
We do. Yes, we do.
So,
yes,
I better be careful then. All right.
I don't know. So, you've trained a while, and you know some things. So.
I mean, I'm. At this point, I've done martial arts for more than my life than I haven't. But for rolling, it's been a long time since I've been in the rolling game. So I'm knocking a lot of rust off right now. You know.
Yeah.
So Jim, before we take some questions and people send in whatever you have, I'm writing a new post on the old Substack, and I actually wanted to brainstorm.
Which I still haven't gotten around to starting my Substack yet, but I'm going to.
Yeah, but help me think my post out loud here.
Let's do it.
I got down a few points, but my post is rules for a good conversation.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
And I thought this would be needed because we know that it's kind of, there's this
a good co-host.
Yeah. A good co-host helps. Right. But there's, you know, and I want to differentiate between conversation and teaching. I think a lot of what we do is teaching. And I think that the conversation is different from that. Right. Different. I think a good conversation, an example of this, which was very recent, was between me, you, and Gavin, because one of my rules for a good conversation is you have to eventually get to a point of disagreement. Otherwise it's not a good conversation. Right. Because to me, a good conversation has to be one that is, there's 2 conditions for good conversation. And this I'm borrowing from Mortimer Adler: pleasurable, but profitable. Right. Yeah. And pleasurable you can have without disagreement, but can you have profitable without disagreement? That's kind of hard, right? If we want to be profited by a conversation, we have to get to some point of disagreement where we can, where argumentation can come in and wisdom can flow. Right?
At the very least, something has to be at stake.
Yeah.
Right? Like you know what I mean? Like something has to be at stake. Like whether or not we have to literally disagree, it could be we're all perplexed. We're both perplexed, and we're just trying to figure. We're all looking for clues at the same crime scene, sort of thing, right?
Maybe better to say we have to get to something that's unanswered. Right?
Yeah. Like it's sort of, what is it in book 1 of Aristotle's Metaphysics, where he says, inquiry begins in wonder, right? Okay. We all like all men desire to know. We start out in wonder, but in order for the inquiry to be anything at all, we have to be changed by it. Namely, the state of wonder has to be moved to something else. Right.
Right.
And wonder is a kind of becoming. It's unrested. Right. It is, but it isn't. I have a sense of where I'm looking for things, but I'm not there yet. Right. And what is the end of inquiry? It's to come to rest, right? Okay, it's to go from becoming to being, all right? And so I think all of that is to say, I think in a real conversation, there must be something at stake. It doesn't have to literally be disagreement, but something has to be at stake. Like we are going to be changed by it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Excellent. Right. All right. This is good. This is already helpful because now I'm going to go and just modify my first paragraph slightly because of Jim, which is what I wanted to do.
I'll be looking for the footnote.
Yeah. Yeah. You'll be credited. Don't worry. So, all right. So one of the other points,
I'm really worried about that kind of thing, right?
This fits well in with some of the other things I was talking about. One is this, you have to be willing to argue. Now, you don't necessarily have to disagree to argue. You can argue together to try and reach further conclusions in the state of wonder. So to me, that's something that you don't have to do it right away. And I think anybody with any social awareness knows that it's kind of annoying if you just kind of like launch into arguments, right? Like establish rapport, find common ground.
The philosophy grad student at a cocktail party. Don't be that guy.
Dude, yeah, well, those are the two things I say in this post I have already, because one is like be willing to argue and try to get to a point where you are arguing, but two things come along with that. One is don't argue for the sake of arguing. Yeah. You argue because you want to find truth, and everybody knows the person who just argues every damn triviality just because they can, because they want to display their cleverness or cynicism. And that's the worst person. That is how to not have a good conversation. Never be that person. And then the second thing I say is you don't argue to win, right? You have to really work hard, and all of us struggle with this if we're being honest, to make sure that truth is your target, not victory. Because if truth is your target, then you'll always be victorious no matter what, right? As long as you're willing to follow arguments kind of where they lead, right? Like even if your position gets refuted, but now you've come into something that at least seems to you more probably true. Well, if truth was your target all along, like that's a win, right? Ultimately. You see what I'm saying? So just be curious what you would add to those.
Okay. I actually wish, because my son that I was just talking to off the camera here is my son Cormac, who's 10. And he's a conversational master. Like he is a master of conversation. He really already at his age, right? And I think what makes Cormac so good at conversation, and like he's so good at conversation. By the time he was like 7, we called him the mayor of Atchison, because he just walked around town, man, like he owned it, and he knew everybody in town, and everybody wanted to talk to him. And it's because he really wants to hear your story. Like he wants to hear your discourse, right? It's less about him having something to say, and he really wants to hear what you have to say, right? And he's open to learning from you in his conversations. He's open, you know what I mean? Like it might be because he's the youngest of 6 kids, so he's been like told how stupid he is his whole life by his siblings. Like so, he's like very into his ignorance, right? But he really wants to hear. He's happy to like hold back on his own thing long enough to hear what you have to say.
Sure.
You see what I mean? So he's not coming out trying to prove something.
That's brilliant.
He's coming out. Yeah. He's coming out to try to hear you. Right. And then he's happy to like start asking questions and like, and part of my getting to know you is to test you, right? To test what you say, right? To feel you out, to find, to poke around. Right. And so I think like the way you start a conversation out is by inviting the other person to tell their story about, whether it's their like literally their story or like whatever their take is on what we're going to talk about. Let them have the stage. Let them do the thing. Yeah. Right. And because that now we can now we have something we can work with. There's a common thing between us. It's your discourse, and let's talk about your discourse. Right. Not that I'm trying to prove it right. Not that I'm trying to prove it wrong. It's just I'm looking for a relief to my perplexity, and I'm looking for you to help me with that. And let's start out with your attempt to do that. Yeah.
This is brilliant. This is very helpful, Jim. I knew you would be a good conversationalist for this. A few other things that kind of strike me, and I hope the listeners are getting value from this, because like if nothing else, like we need to learn to have better conversations these days. And the ironic thing is like as sort of technology in communication has increased, the skillfulness in communication has significantly diminished, right?
Yes, it has.
The very sad, lamentable state of affairs. So a few other things that strike me that I just sort of have down in my sketch of an outline for this right now is like, seek to understand before you get to the argument first, right? And I think this ties into what you're saying about Mayor Cormack is, ask questions, ask clarifying questions. Like really try to understand somebody's position first before you just start launching into a bunch of arguments, so that you're not just attacking a cartoon and actually understanding what the primary issue actually is as well. And identifying that and being explicit about it. Is this what you mean? And then ask and restate and get as much clarity as you can. And that works for establishing a relationship too, because people are more likely to take you seriously and engage in a conversation seriously when they actually think that you're listening to them.
Yeah.
Right. And that's just, again, it's like some of this just seems like basic social awareness, but unfortunately it's not so common these days.
Not so common. Yeah. Well, and I think also it has to, like, you have to have a willingness to put yourself at stake in it too. And so a willingness to like make your claim, give your story. Right. But know that like you're taking a risk of self-disclosure and you're showing your thing. Right. And don't get triggered if it doesn't sell. Right. You know what I mean? Like know that conversation involves a risk, right? It involves the self-disclosure, and it just because you have not convicted the other person, this is not a rejection of you or anything like that. You see what I mean? And I think a lot of times, like one of the things that's barring people from conversation, is fear of being wrong, right? It's fragility, right?
Yeah.
Like just from our interactions and like a lot of the kind of like changes my own views and stuff like that. I am not afraid of being wrong. Right. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Which I think helps me in conversation. Yeah.
Again, this is actually something I get from my buddy, Josh Rasmussen, who stresses this so much, is like, when you go into conversation, like you really have to like remind yourself, my intention is to get to more truth. Right. That, and like you have to like make that a mantra, because we're all so susceptible to it. Right. I don't want to make it seem like I'm the exception to this rule. Obviously I'm not. I do the best I can.
Yeah.
But the reason I think about rules for a conversation is like nobody ever adheres to the rules perfectly in any game. Tennis, football, nobody has them there. They're ideals, right? That we're supposed to try to approximate, and we'll fall short sometimes, but we understand what the rules are, why they're there, and understand that without rules, without these standards, no game, certainly no good game, could ever be played. So that's why I thought it'd be worthwhile just to spend a few minutes talking about this.
Yeah, I think it's a great topic for a post.
Right. Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, let's take some questions. I see a lot of good stuff already coming in. Anthony's a quick one here. Jim, do you have a club bell coming anytime soon? Program?
Yeah, I probably should do that. If I do though, I don't think it'll be a double club bell one, just because it requires people to have two club bells, right? And I think just getting people started on it. I think my first effort at a club bell program will probably be a single one, just because I'm assuming a lot of people buying it will be club newbies, and they'll be probably buying their first club from Inverted Gear.
Yeah.
Right. As part of that, so it'll probably be a one clubber. But yeah, you're right though. I probably should go ahead and do that. I've got a few YouTube videos up on programming ideas, but I'll try to pull it all together into something cool that's packageable. Yeah.
Well, we will be sure to announce it.
When
that happens.
Exactly.
Herb's got a question here. Who is Jim's favorite or top 3 grapplers?
And not counting those who live in my household, huh? Right. Okay, well, Nelson from Inverted Gear, right? Our boy Nelson, right? No, I guess in terms of like big grappling superstar types, I like Tom DeBlas, mainly because like I play a very similar game to what he does. Okay, so he's a deep half guard guy. I'm a deep half guard guy. So I've kind of like, I haven't like really followed a lot of his stuff, but we play a lot of the same ways. And like, I'll see a video, I'm like, oh yeah, cause that's kind of what I do. Mm-hmm. But beyond that, I really like that the whole crew of misfit characters from Daisy Fresh, right? I like this sort of American jiu-jitsu movement that's going on. And I like just the young Turks from flyover country as a romantic thing for me. Right. So I like that the Wiltsey brothers from Daisy Fresh, the Hillbilly Hammer from Daisy Fresh. Right. I find those guys interesting. I think it's very hard not to like, what's his name? Mikey Mutshabini or whatever. He's one of the guys you see on Flow all the time. Just a really kind of geeky kid who just murders people at the highest level in jiu-jitsu. So yeah, but I'll say this is I don't follow kind of like the big pro jiu-jitsu world all that closely, right?
Yeah,
I don't.
Do I.
Yeah, I mean, and because I'm and in fact I find all that stuff is kind of a distraction from it, and I don't necessarily like the direction of where it's going with all the like smack talk that you start to see now and like the professionalization of it. I for me, jiu-jitsu is about being with the people in my gym, doing the thing together in this community with these people that, like the mentorship of my coach to me, and then for like my more fundamental students to, going the other way from me to them. It's really about the local and the personal and the particular in many, many ways, and it's looking away from all the hype of sport that we see. Yeah.
You know me, I'm not a huge pro sports guy. However, and I see you already have some questions about this, I did order the pay-per-view for tomorrow night.
Did you the
Fury and Wilder?
Yeah. I'm debating on that. Right.
Come on up, man. Come watch it up.
That's right. So my son in Hawaii, he and his guys are gonna get it. And the thing, so my wife loves her some MMA. I mean, like crazy. Like, I mean,
it's like my wife with 90s wrestling, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like Jen loves MMA, and she's a jiu-jitsu player too. But man, she like if Dana White's selling, Jen is buying.
Got it.
Okay. All right. But the boxing, for some reason, man, she just cannot stand to watch boxing. Like she will watch, young people kick each other's eyeballs out in MMA, but boxing she just cannot stand to watch. I don't know why, right? So I don't know if we'll do it or not, but I'm there's part of me wants to do it.
Yeah, I'm pumped. Me and my wife are gonna have a little date night, at home date night, which we like to do at least once a week. So we'll do that, and I'm going for Fury. That's both my preference and prediction. So
it's probably a pretty good card overall too. I would assume they've put together.
Yeah. So looking forward to it. All right. Yeah. Let's keep going here. Good stuff, guys. Well, actually, here's the relevant question. Are you guys interested in boxing? Looking forward to the fight this weekend? Well, I think we just kind of answered that. Definitely. No, honestly, no, I'm interested in it as a sport. I did bare knuckle boxing for a number of years.
Did you really?
Training Taekwondo. Yeah, my old bare knuckle boxing coach, Brian Petty, was one of my first kettlebell coaches as well.
Yeah, you've mentioned that guy before.
So, and that was, man, those were some really great formative years. So as a martial art, I love it. I've loved studying it. But as something that I watch as a professional sport, almost never.
I'm glad you called boxing a martial art. I think that's important that people understand that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, all right. Herb has another question. If you had to replace the big three from powerlifting with 3 different lifts, what would they be and why?
Okay. I'm gonna Herb, we love you, but I'm gonna give a little bit of a snotty answer here. Right. There's a reason why they're the big three, right? They're not really replaceable. Right. You know what I mean? So I don't think there's anything that does exactly what like the squat, bench, and deadlift do in terms of just getting strong AF, right?
Right.
You know what I mean? And you could talk about like if you're hurt, like towards the end of my barbell time, I was doing a lot of floor pressing because the just the regular bench pressing just didn't feel right. Okay, so I think you can go to sort of moderated versions of those lifts, but I think if what you're looking for is to be a big strong person or just a really brute strong person, the big three are the big three for that reason. Does that make sense? Right now, I know like just using Jim Wendler,
and if you're going to compete, there's nothing else.
There's nothing else,
right?
Yeah, there's nothing else, right? But I know like Jim Wendler for a while there had like terrible shoulder problems. I think he even had like both his shoulders done at one point.
Sure.
And so his main upper body lift was the bent over row, right? And he like programmed the bent over row just like you would program any of the main power lifts, right? And was able to stay very, very much a big, strong, swole Jim Wendler dude doing that, right? I think he had some problems with the deadlift for a while too, and saying he just used the bent over row. So I think like there's ways you could replace them and that you could find other lifts that would like help you stay big, strong dude. Okay. But I don't think there's anything that's going to do for you exactly what those 3 things do. Right.
Yeah.
So if I couldn't deadlift and that's what I wanted to do, I'd be definitely doing weighted pull-ups anyway. I'd be doing weighted pull-ups. I'd be doing kettlebell swings, heavy bent over rows. Right. For the bench press, I don't know what replaces the bench press that isn't the same thing.
I mean,
maybe weighted dips, right? I know Wendler did that for
that's what I was going to say. I was going to say, what do I do? Because I don't really do the big three.
I don't either.
For hinging, I do deadlift. I don't back squat. I kettlebell front squat, and I think that's just such a money exercise. I mean, that's my favorite squatting variation for sure.
Yeah.
And then for pressing, I do a bunch of stuff. I'm actually, if you're going to like modify the bench press, I have always liked and always feel really good with incline dumbbell press. I also love dips. I'm a dip monster. It's one of those lifts that I'm just sort of naturally strong at, unlike the bench press. So it's kind of like, wire me up, load me up with plates, and I'll do dips. But I think it is a great exercise in and of itself. So
I agree. Yeah. And I don't mean to be snotty to our guy here, but
I mean, a direct answer is a direct answer, right? If you're trying to compete in this stuff, you have to do it. There's no exception, right? But if your question is, hey, I want to get, strong at hinging pattern or squatting pattern or pushing pattern, then there's many options there. And I would say, front squats with kettlebells are awesome. If you're not going to barbell deadlift, the hinging for just on that side of the force velocity spectrum is kind of limited because I mean, just like nothing even comes close to the barbell there. So, but maybe you want to do explosives to go on the kind of swing on the spectrum a bit. Then something like double cleans is going to go a while, or even just kettlebell swings. And then dips. I love dips. And
I'm doing a program right now that I'm really in love with, but the only downside of it is he wants me deadlifting with kettlebells, right? And look, I've deadlifted 600 pounds, right? There is no kettlebell that's going to do the thing for me on.
It's just not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. Yeah. So I have to modify that, right?
Right. You either have to lift faster or start taking away limbs. But honestly, even if you take away limbs, like a single leg deadlift with 2 really heavy kettlebells is not.
It's not the same thing.
Right.
I think it might have been Herb last week when your question answer had asked, are there any movements that you're bad at and do you feel like you should be working on them? And we didn't get to that question, right?
Take it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so, because actually the program I'm doing right now, because as you know, I'm like a connoisseur of programs, right? Okay. Mm-hmm. I hate lunges. I absolutely hate lunges. I'm bad at lunges.
You and Dan John, apparently.
I loathe them, right? But I think that I hate them probably because I'm bad at them. And that's a seriously legit movement pattern. So occasionally I will go out of my way to do programs that make me do bunches of lunges, right? Or like Bulgarian split squats. I think one of the best things I ever did for myself athletically, orthopedically, was when I went on a couple of cycles of a Joe DeFranco program that were like the main event lower body lift was the Bulgarian split squat.
That is such an amazing exercise. It really, I tell people that is probably my favorite love to hate exercise.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. You go heavy with that for like 8 to 12 reps. It's pure misery. Pure
DeFranco would have you be doing these like paused reps at the bottom and stuff. And like, I remember I'm like using the barbell to do this. Right. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But anyway, so I'm doing this program by Luka Hocevar, and man, the dude, he's got a weird thing for the lunge, and it's killing me, right? It's killing me, right? Yeah. But I know it's good for me. I know it's really, really good for me. And I have to say, like, I get really tight hip flexor stuff going on, and I that stuff is feeling really good right now.
Lunges. This is where I part ways from Dan. I'm a big fan of lunges and single leg stuff. And Bulgarian split squats are there for me, anyways. There is nothing that makes me as sore, as completely crippled and wrecked as high rep, heavy Bulgarian split squats. Like if I just want to guarantee that I'm not going to move for a week, 3 to 4 sets of 8 to 12 reps of that with a tempo, it's over. It's over. Yeah. Good night.
Yeah. And so I do think it's important to figure out the stuff you hate and ask yourself, why do you hate it? Right. And then ask yourself if maybe the reason you hate it is because you're bad at it and it's something that you should be better at. And it's and you've got a problem because you're not good at it. Yeah.
By the way, Nick said he sent in a question. It's off topic. Nothing is off topic, my friend. We've got a lot of philosophy questions coming up, some fitness. Anything you want to send us is fair game. We're just kind of taking them how they come. Yeah.
To think you could be off topic would be to grossly overestimate the seriousness with which we take this. Right?
I challenge you guys to try and give us a question that we say is off topic or too weird or something like that. It's Freaky Friday.
we won't talk about vaccines.
It's free. Yeah. We will, but not where we'll get my channel banned. How about that?
Exactly.
Trying to stay online for at least a couple more years.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
All right, let's see here. Sorry, lost where I was at in the thing here. All right, here's a philosophy question. Alex says, what are your guys' thoughts on Asian philosophy, like Confucianism or Daoism or those schools of thoughts? Actually, you can see the Tao Te Ching right from here over on my shelf.
Yeah, no, I read the Tao Te Ching, was it last summer, right? No, summer before last, right? And I see Asian philosophy as something of a blind spot of mine that I'm starting to take steps to like address, right? And in fact, though, in my book I just finished,
it was a pathway to me to Christian philosophy.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I think Taoism would be like my fallback, right?
Yeah.
But I have a in my chapter on technology in the new book, a big chunk of it is written, in conversation with a guy named Keiji Nishitani, who's a Japanese Buddhist philosopher, right?
Yeah.
And I think he's got a very important take on this stuff. So I'm starting to explore that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, Alex, I'm a fan. It's been a while since I spent a lot of time with it, but I had a number of years where, just reading stuff like Tao Te Ching was, it's just kind of one of those funny things, Jim, is just like obviously you saw where I wound up. I'm Catholic, and I would go by Catholic parishes and was so familiar with Christian culture. But like when I decided to abandon my atheism, you know what I mean? It wasn't like, well, let me just go look at Christian, like the things that are right in front of me right away. I'm like, no, the secret's got to be in Asia.
It can't be that easy, man.
Right. And it's just kind of this funny thing. It's like the tendency to not want to look at what's familiar. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And we see that just in so many ways. And I was definitely there, but it actually benefited me. So, I mean, I was really big, and you talk about fallbacks, like in religious pluralism, right?
Yeah.
Like that to me as a philosophical, theistic philosophy was very attractive. And I spent many years there. And, I kind of like and I still think it's right to say like, there's a lot of stuff that is in Asian philosophy that is true. And, some of it seems like perfectly consistent with what you'll hear from classical theists and stuff like that.
Natural reason is a thing.
Right. And like C.S. Lewis, when he's giving his defense of natural law and abolition of man, like literally calls it the Tao. Right. Yeah. So,
my recommendation is Thomas Merton has his own, I guess it's not translation, it's like his retelling of a lot of Lao Tzu's sayings. I love that book. I read that book a few summers ago, and it was a really beautiful experience reading that book. Right.
Yeah, I got through part of Seven Story Mountain, but not all.
Okay. And he has a couple other books on Zen Buddhism specifically, which I thought, I don't know if it was Zen Buddhism or if it was Merton or both, but I found very, very profound, very, very like almost orientation changing in a lot of ways, like reshaping. And so I really recommend Merton's encounter with the East, like as a way in. Right.
Here, all right. Herb's got another question now.
One more thing on the Eastern thing. One of my favorite sayings from Taoism is there's a person's walking on the road and notices this really, really beautiful tree. Right. And so he asks the beautiful tree, right, how is it that you've become the most beautiful tree? Right. And he says, because I'm the most useless to the carpenter, because my trunk is crooked. Right. And so the advice ends up becoming like cultivate uselessness. Right.
Right. Yeah.
And so I often find myself cultivating uselessness. Right.
As any good philosopher should.
Yeah.
Right.
I do not want to be useful to the carpenters in my vicinity.
So great. All right. Herb's got a question on scripture. I feel like we did this one before. Herb says, I still yet to hear a good apology for reference to slavery in the Bibles. Do you guys care to try? Sure. We can try, but let me ask one thing, talk about like rules of good conversation. If you wouldn't mind, Herb, I'd be curious to hear like what is the best apology, as in reason for defense that you've heard. I'd be curious just to hear that. And what do you find unsatisfactory about that? Right. Go ahead, Jim. Yep.
I was gonna say, I mean, I had a really interesting debate about this many years ago with a good friend of mine by a guy named Gordon Barnes, who's a philosopher. He just had a book come out from Hackett anyway, but on this particular issue, right? And I guess at the end of the day, I don't have any more of an apology for that, because like usually what people have in mind is, St. Paul's reference to slaves obey your masters, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, right, or and I don't have any more apology for that than I do like St. Paul saying women shouldn't talk in church, right? Like there are certain things like we are going to have to like make decisions about which of these things in here, given what we can see now as like moral reason, are in fact legitimate revelation, and which of the things are culturally contingent for that moment. Does that make sense? Right. And so I don't feel any need to like make an apology like that is to like defend that stance on slavery anything more than I do that other things that are in the Bible that are clearly an expression of an ancient situation and not a contemporary situation. Does that make sense?
No,
And
right.
it puts me on like the slippery slope. They're going to have to make all these hard decisions. You can't be sure everything in it is literally true. And I say, yeah, that's kind of partly why I'm a Catholic, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so
having some type of teaching authority helps, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And so, and I'm not going to like say like the church's relationship to that particular issue has always been really cool, right?
Mm-hmm.
But once again, that's the point. Is there's I'm a Newman guy on this. There's a development of doctrine that happens, right? And so for instance, but so all that being said, when my understanding is when Paul says, slaves obey your masters, like you have to understand this is a guy who seems to think the end is coming like maybe tomorrow, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and he is not at all concerned with some kind of like social political revolution, because there's just not time for this, right? Like he thinks it does seem that historically St. Paul thinks the end is coming like pretty quick here, right? So we don't really necessarily know what his attitude towards social institutions would have been if he had a longer view of history.
Right.
Mind,
And
okay?
well, the letter to Philemon might give us an indication there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Where
yeah.
he, grants, exhorts to grant freedom, for example.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. He does say, hey, free him.
Mm-hmm.
But he's also saying, let's not have a violent revolution, because it's just going to get a bunch of blood spilled, and Jesus is coming tomorrow anyway, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you know what I mean? And so that's not to say he's like in any way, Paul was apologizing for the institution of slavery,
Mm-hmm.
right? Do you know what I mean? And moreover, is something like abolitionism a thinkable possibility in the Roman Empire? It is not, right? Yeah.
Not only is that correct, and hopefully we're just having a good, honest conversation as we've talked about good conversations here, right? But first off, I'm going to drop a link in here from my buddy John DeRosa, who's talked about this in length. He's I'm not like a scriptural apologist by any means, but I've thought about these things, right?
I think I'm on a show pretty soon, actually.
Yeah, I mean, one thing to just, there's simple distinctions often go away one way. One is the distinction between reporting or describing something and prescribing something, right? Is it prescribing that we do this, or is it just reporting it and describing it in certain ways? And I think once you have those distinctions in hand, it goes a long way. And I'll just let the reader take those, the listener take those distinctions and see what they make of it. The second is, of course, the cultural context, right? And we don't have to say that we approve of all of this, but it is important to understand that slavery, especially in like the Old Testament and stuff like that, it was very, very different than, say, chattel slavery, the type of slavery that America is very embarrassed to have practiced, right, in our history. Especially for the Jewish people in the Old Testament, slavery was something that was often engaged in voluntarily. You would sell yourself almost as a means of social welfare system, right? And there were laws of having to let your slaves free after a certain amount of time, right? So it's just really important to understand that like it's a very broad term that can cause people to import like, the more monstrous aspects of slavery that might not necessarily have applied back then as well. Again, that's not to make say like this is great or we should be happy this happened, but these are what honest people who are really trying to look into the matter will discover about what's actually going on there, right? Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah, so good stuff. I linked an article in there, Herb, if you want to just check that out. And I would recommend John DeRosa's podcast, because his podcast is sort of dedicated to working through all that sorts of stuff. All right, what else we got here? Wow, lots of good stuff. Have to scroll way back up. Okay, Jim, this one's totally for you, my friend. Floyd wants to know, do you see any similarity between how Heidegger views being and language with God and Scripture?
Not quite sure if I understand the question. Do you see any similarity between how Heidegger views being and language with God and Scripture? Floyd, can you hit us again with that question a little more clarified? Yeah, I'm not quite sure what to do with that as it stands. Is that a
No, yeah. Just clarify for us, Floyd, and we'll do what we can to be at your service. Catholic says, how do you deal with these types of people? He's talking about people that just argue for argument's sake and make conversations painful. He says, I almost feel like directing them to some books and hoping it'll mellow out. Yeah, I'll say a few things. I mean, again, ask questions, try to establish rapport with people as much as you can before you get into an argument. But at the same time, I think you got like, don't cast pearls before swine, as they say. If you know something's going to be, if you know something's going to be a complete waste of time, then you're not obligated to waste your time, and you probably shouldn't, right? So, you'll just gain prudence and kind of get you'll be able to sniff it out. It just comes with experience of like, okay, this is going to be, at least there's a probability here or a chance that this conversation might be productive. I'm going to do it. But it gets pretty obvious when you deal with somebody who's really not there to have a conversation, right? Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, if you don't want to go to Dublin, don't get on the train. Right? Yeah.
Yeah. Good. All right. Sorry. This thread is nice and juicy. Callum says, if you ever come to the UK for a conference, I'll come and say hi. Yeah, it'd be sweet.
Yeah, heck yeah, man.
Might be there next year, Ireland, with this one that Gavin is putting on. So keep an eye out for that, Callum. Could be a cool one. Did Pat cut his hair? I cut all of them.
I didn't cut his hair.
To use my favorite dad joke.
Oh yeah.
All right, Danny's got a good question here. How do we deal with solipsism and the problem of other minds, right? So why don't we just explain these positions first, and we can talk about it, right? So solipsism is one of those positions where why aren't there more solipsists out there, right? Is the joke, right?
Right.
Right. It's the idea that sort of only you exist, right? I think Bertrand Russell had a passing phase of solipsism, it seemed, and it's a radically skeptical position. That's what solipsism is, and the problem of other minds is how do I know Jim isn't just a cleverly programmed android, for example? How do I know that he actually has a mind in the way that I'm pretty sure that I have a mind, right? Like there's nothing I can do scientifically to figure that out, right? There's no sort of empirical test at all for that, because anything that might give me evidence of that is something that, of course, an android that is programmed cleverly enough, presumably just in a broadly skeptical scenario, should be able to pass, right? So how do we deal with this problem of other minds? Jim, I've got my kind of preferred ways of thinking about this, but did you want to take the first whack? Or
yeah, I mean, the fact that one recognizes that there's a problem of other minds shows that things have gone deeply, deeply wrong much higher up the stream. Okay, mm-hmm. so I don't think there is a problem with the minds, and the idea that I go through some sort of criterial procedure in recognizing my own mind, and then I'm unable to apply those criteria in recognizing other people's minds, presumes I have some awareness of my own mind independently of my relation to other minds, and that's a premise I deny, right? Mm-hmm. If what we're talking about by mindedness is some kind of propositional thought, right, then I'm gonna kick in a private language argument there and say, well, there isn't propositional thought, right, in a solipsistic situation. Okay, mm-hmm. If what we mean by mindedness is something like, the kind of practical engagement that like phenomenologists begin with, well, then that assumes I'm already embedded in a shared world to get that off the ground, right? Mm-hmm. So my point on all of this stuff, and it's a very long story to tell, is to say that like to even get the question of other minds off the ground presupposes that that's not a problem, right? Now this is a very different orientation that you and I have with respect to skeptical problems in general, right? Yeah. Like for me, the fact that they come up, I'm with Wittgenstein and Heidegger on this, is that the fact that they come up shows that there's something like globally defective.
Yeah. So let me add to that. This actually came up in a recent conversation I had with Stephen Napier. We were actually talking the evolutionary argument against naturalism.
Yeah. I'm sorry I missed that one, by the way.
Dude, that was a good one. That was fun. Napier is just such a bright guy out of Villanova there, and he's like a hidden gem that I feel like I kind of like. I found him, and he's my treasure.
He's treasure.
Yeah. Really, really brilliant dude. So I was happy to have him on. But Plantinga, right, is big on this. He's got a book called God and Other Minds. I think that's the title of it, if I remember rightly, mm-hmm. right? And what he's going to argue for is that that if you have a sort of epistemology that is, he would argue, sort of arbitrarily restricted, in as much as you're trying to cut off any avenue to God, any rational avenue to God, you're going to invite a whole bunch of other skeptical scenarios, like the problem of other minds, right?
Yep.
So he's going to say this is what's called a basic belief, and eventually a properly basic belief. And I actually think Plantinga's project is pretty, I think it's right, generally, right? Yeah. So here's how we have to think about this. Let's zoom way out, right? So this is everything Jim said and would say, plus, right? Plus this. So agree with everything Jim said, but take these considerations as well, right? Here's how we can start out epistemology. We can either start out epistemology by distrusting all of our cognitive faculties until they're proven reliable, or we can start out epistemology by trusting our cognitive faculties, at least generally, until they're proven, until we have reason to revise our beliefs, right? And what I want to argue is the first one is impossible and self-defeating, right? And this is Thomas Reid's great project, right? It makes no sense to sort of use one aspect of your cognitive powers, reason, to cast doubt on other aspects of your cognitive powers. It's completely arbitrary, right? So it's Wittgenstein says if you tried to doubt everything, you wouldn't get so far as to doubting anything, right? The sort of the global skepticism is self-defeating, right? Because you're trusting a cognitive faculty to doubt cognitive faculties, right? It just doesn't even work. Right? It just kind of like explodes in incoherence, right? Plus, I don't think like classical foundationalism or anything like that, right? I don't think that's going to work. So I think like we need to start epistemology from the posture of assuming what most of us assume anyways, right? That our cognitive faculties are innocent until proven guilty. That's unavoidable. We have to do that, right? But those cognitive powers orient me to the world in a whole bunch of different ways. They give me intuitions and seemings on many different things, such as that Jim has a mind, is like me, right? Like this is just something that is just a natural belief that is occasioned in me. I don't base it off of other like inferences, right? It's just a sort of basic belief that there's an external world, basic belief. I have mathematical intuitions. I have moral intuitions, right? And again, generally reliable, but not necessarily infallible, right? If people give me reasons or evidence to think that I'm off on some areas, then I, of course, will revise that. So I think that is the position you have to take. It's unavoidable, because it's unavoidable that we are knowers on some level. Yeah. But being knowers would be impossible with the first position, right?
Right.
Like I know what I mean by the words that I'm using, right? Like we are knowers. You can't deny that. And if knowledge or rational belief would be impossible in the first position, then the second position has to be true. Our faculties are generally reliable, not infallible. And so to me, I am broadly a Reidian on this. And I think that does defeat all the skeptical scenarios, right? Because there's no arbitrary breaks. That's the key. There's a normative web and there's no arbitrary breaks. So in this, if I'm going to trust anyone, including reason, I have reason to trust them all, absence any defeater. So I have no reason to doubt that there's an external world. I have no reason to doubt that Jim has a mind. I have no reason to think in the idiotic idea that I'm in a simulation hypothesis. I saw that came in. So just throw that in there with these skeptical scenarios.
While we're at it.
Right. And then what gets really interesting is like, since we see this is the position we have to take, it's unavoidable, and it seems like the obviously right position, then we can ask, what is the worldview that provides the conditions for this? That provides the conditions where it makes sense to trust the general reliability of our cognitive faculties. And that's actually Plantinga's brilliant move with his evolutionary argument against naturalism. He says, whatever that worldview is, it ain't naturalism, right? It ain't naturalism, right? So that's
which can I always point out, which was Nietzsche's argument first.
Yeah, dude, I brought that up with Napier. I'm like, Nietzsche said it first. He's like, if we still believe in grammar, we still believe in God, right?
Yeah. Okay, so here's the subtle difference between you and me, though.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is I don't think I trust my cognitive faculties. I don't think I mistrust them. I don't think I trust them. I don't think they're candidates for that kind of consideration, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's assuming I can have a kind of cognitive distance from my cognitive faculties, right? Mm. I don't think that there are other minds is a belief of mine, right? Mm-hmm. It's a structure. It's a very structure that allows me to have any orientation to the world whatsoever. Do you know what I mean? I don't think I can distance myself from it. Now, this is where I'll admit, like I go to like a pretty pretty batshit crazy externalist panpsychism here, where I don't really think you and I have distinct minds. Okay.
Well, yeah.
Okay,
well,
right.
let's pause right there. That's a really
yeah.
important distinction, because I think you're right. I don't think you can have what's called real doubt about other minds. I think you can only have nominal doubt.
Sure.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, like that, in that Newman's sense of nominal doubt. Yeah.
And I think that's right, because it's so fundamental, it's so structural that we couldn't even get around in the world if it wasn't, right? Yeah.
Right. And so for me, like I'm so externalist, I'm not even going to think of these as beliefs, right? They're not discrete cognitive episodes that I have. They are the very structure of my having any intentionality whatsoever presupposes it's an intentionality I share with other people linguistically. Right.
Yeah.
Right. That reminds me, like, sometime we should do a thing on Newman's grammar of assent.
Totally, man. Newman's great. I love
that.
Him.
Would be an interesting deep dive, several episode thing. Right.
Brilliant.
And bring in my guy, Dave Devil, is a friend of mine. He's like a Newman guy who's really worked in that book. Yeah.
Right. So summary for the Reedian view, which I think is generally right. In addition to everything that Jim just said, is it's undeniable that we're knowers. Only one posture provides the conditions for that. That posture takes care of all the skeptical scenarios as far as I'm concerned. Doesn't mean that you're infallible. Of course, there's reasons that we need to revise our beliefs in light of good evidence, right? And I would argue there's only one worldview, theism, that can actually support that epistemology at the end of the day as well. Right?
But yeah, as with the caveat, once I just gonna make sure it's not one of my kids. With the caveat that I don't think you have to, and I don't think Planick is saying this, be a theist in order to employ rationality. It's just he doesn't think you can be an explicit naturalist and do it, because now you've got an undermining defeater.
An undefeatable defeater.
Yeah.
Claim, right.
That's important, right?
Yeah, spot on.
Hey, there was one here from Tyler Supalla. One of the questions, who's my guy, right? Who asked, you said you both mentioned wives in this episode. Any thoughts on having a good marriage? Just got married this year, baby coming in January. Congratulations, Tyler. Yeah.
Congratulations, my brother.
By the way, tell Paul I will be replying to his email, and his email did like make my day, right? So, but anyway, I have here's some of my standard unsolicited marriage advice, but he solicited it, so okay. There's sort of like 2 or 3 rules that we've run our marriage by for 20 years that have really paid dividends for us. Okay. Number 1 is neither of us will ever have a conversation with anyone at all under any circumstances that we would not have if our spouse were in the room.
Great rule.
Right. Okay. Now, if I worked for the CIA or something, that might be different, but happily I don't. Okay. Right. And so, because that means if I abide that rule, if I say I will never I won't tell a joke. Now, luckily my wife has a incredibly, great sense of humor. So
it gives you wide latitude.
Yeah. Like we enjoy our mom jokes, my wife and I. Okay. Right. I mean, we like making mom jokes to our sons, which is fun.
Okay. Right, dude, I love that. I can't wait. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So, but I won't make a joke that I wouldn't make if Jen were in the room.
Right.
Because if I do that, or I won't have a conversation, I won't go to an event or anything that I wouldn't go to if Jen were there. Right. Or at least I wouldn't go to if she didn't know I was there or she knew I was there. Right. Okay. Because what I'm doing there is, even if we're not talking about literal, like sexual infidelity or something like that, is I'm letting somebody else get closer to me than she is. Right. If I say, hey, I'll talk about this with Pat, but I won't talk about this with Jen. Right. Then I'm saying there's someone else is going to have a kind of intimacy with me that I'm barring Jen from.
Right.
Okay. And so now we're not the one flesh union anymore. Right. We're not 2 as if 1. Okay. Now look, if you are having psychological problems and you need to see a therapist and it's somehow, it's not the time to disclose something to your spouse. Okay. That's different. If it's a clinical situation, it's different. If you like, once again, if you need a security clearance, that's different. Right. Okay. Right. But for the most part,
if you talk and say things to your boys that you would never do with your wife, that's a problem.
Because now you're living a divided life. Okay. Do you see what I mean? All right. Number 2 rule for us is I will never, ever speak to my wife in a tone of voice that I would not speak to one of my colleagues at work. Right. Like I don't get snippy, snappy, nasty, undercutting, biting, with my colleagues at work. So why would I do that with my wife? Like, this is the one person that I shouldn't do that to, right? You know what I mean? And it's sort of like, well, because otherwise what happens is your spouse becomes this emotional punching bag for you.
Yeah.
Because I can't talk to my boss like that because
So.
he can dump me anytime he wants, right?
Mm-hmm.
But this woman here, especially for Catholic, she can't get out of this. So I can kind of say whatever hell I want. And if it makes me feel better, you know what I mean? So we don't tolerate this from each other, and we don't tolerate from our children doing it to each other either, right? Like you are not allowed in our home to speak to anyone from this family, especially Jen and me, right? In a tone of voice that you would not speak to a colleague at work in, right? We just won't have it. And if we can't get through a conversation without that happening, the conversation is over, and we will talk about it later when we can laugh about it.
Yeah, right? Tremendous rule. Tremendous.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And so we're not one of those couples that think, hey, it's important that you never go to bed without resolving the issue, right? That you always, if you have to fight about it, stuff like that. We don't do that, because you're going to say stuff then that's out there, that's in the other person's soul now, that they heard you say, that you can never, ever, 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 ever take back for the rest of your life.
Right.
And we just won't do it. Won't do it. Right. Now we're kind of weird. We're both Mr. Spock. Right. But generally we won't talk about anything unless we can do it civilly. And if we can't do it civilly, it's got to wait. And like, generally we want to wait till we can laugh about it.
Dude, and that is great life advice. In fact, I got that from Mark Twain when I was young. There was something, I forget where it was, but there was, or maybe it was even from one of his daughters, right? The idea was that he would write something angry, but eventually he learned, because I guess he made enough mistakes, that he would never mail it until he was cooled off. And then when he was cooled off, he would usually never mail it.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
So that's the idea. Like you're not going to mail the stuff in the heat of the moment. Yeah. Right.
Okay. In my third, do you mind if I do another one?
Oh, this is, dude, this is awesome.
My third one, I remember we were on a road trip for Christmas, right? And we've got 6 kids. And like at the time, the oldest was like 8, right? Or something like that, or 9 or whatever it was, right? And it was insanity. It was just absence. There's a blizzard. Like, okay, it was just insanity. And I remember,
I know the situation.
Yeah, preach it, brother. Right. Okay. And I remember, Jen and I are starting to feel the tension between us. Right. And I remember I had this thought, like, wait,
starts coming up the back of your neck. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, Jen and I are on the same team. It's us against those kids. They're not on our team. It's the Jen and Jim team against the kids, right?
Right.
And I think it's really important to get this, like, overall, like the person on your team, your only real teammate in life is your spouse, right? And you have to see the world that way. It's like, this is your teammate. This is your person. This is the person who actually loves you. This is the person that is here to help you, and you help that person. Do you see what I mean? Like, have that us against the world mentality, even with respect to your kids, right? Because like you cannot, because there's gonna be situations where it's easier to get angry at your spouse than it is your kids, but the kids are the problem, right? I'm not saying get angry with your kids, just to recognize it's not your spouse.
Yeah.
Right. And in fact, that is your only friend in the world.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
You know
Jim,
like
that is amazing advice. You know, I don't even know if I have a whole bunch to add to that.
Sure.
Except there's one quote that stuck with me, especially as I converted. And I will say that our converting probably saved our marriage, straight up.
Did it really?
The marriage becoming a sacrament makes all the difference in the world.
Sure.
And of course, you know, just getting your life together in general, right?
Yeah,
makes a big difference.
There's partying less is big.
Yeah, but there's, you know, there's a quote. I forget where it was even from, but it was just like, let no man call himself a Christian who treats his wife badly. Yeah. And like, that's just always stuck with me. It's
Full stop.
Always stuck with me. Yeah. Done. My wife is, I love her more than anything. You know, she's my queen. She's my queen. And she deserves to be treated like it. 100%.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, she's my only lifeline. You know, that's it. Right.
Yeah. So everything you said, I say never lie. Never lie. I mean, it's just like in general, never lie ever, but never lie to your kids. Never lie to your wife. These are just two.
And that goes to like rule number 1, because if you're lying, you're
a divided life. Right.
You're a divided life. Hey, wait, you might read a book called The Republic that's about that. But
yeah, I hope you guys were tuning in. Right. All right, let's take some more here. This is good stuff.
I hope that helps, Tyler.
Yeah. God bless you, dude. Do you guys have favorite Thomists? Well, mine's Jim Madden. He's my favorite because if you even call yourself a Thomist. Yeah, I do.
No, I think some people would say with Thomists like that, we don't need, you know. So
yeah, let me give you aside from Jim, let me give you some that have been majorly influential to me. I've said them many times. Jacques Maritain, Bernard Lonergan, Norris Clark would probably be my like big 3. If I extended a little bit more, Eleanor Stump, obviously our great friend Gavin Kerr would be in there. I mean, there's so many, but I would just say if there's three for just who like had the biggest impact in the way that I think about a lot of issues, Lonergan, Clark, Maritain.
Okay, so I'm gonna go dark horse on here.
Let's do it.
So a good friend of mine, a colleague of mine, a guy named Aaron Riches, who's just a brilliant theologian. Okay. Has been like on me like a hound from hell to read a book called Homo Odysseus by a guy named Ulrich, right? And it's this like 800-page tome, which there's like I like that, right? By where he's trying to put together Thomas and Hegel and Heidegger into a conversation and to give like a comprehensive metaphysics of being from a Thomistic standpoint that's answering those challenges, right? So I have committed to like dedicating myself to reading this book in the coming weeks here, and so I am willing to bet I'm probably going to come out saying Ulrich is at least in my top 3 list now. So
right, awesome. All right, sorry, just scrolling back up here to see where we're at. Oh, here's an interesting question. Callan wants to know: would we rather fight in a Viking shield wall or in World War I trench warfare? First one for me, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess at least in the Viking shield wall, you are an active party in it, right? Whereas, in World War I trench warfare, you're mainly just sitting there waiting for death from above to fall on you.
Yeah. Right. If I'm going to I think about like, how would I want to die? I want a blade through me.
Yeah. I'd rather go out like swinging swords at someone and losing than just waiting for like an explosion above my head to vaporize
or gas or something like that.
Yeah, whatever 100%. It was. Yeah,
right. Yeah. So no doubt. Yeah.
But I also say that I have lived a soft life and I don't have a right to an opinion about this. So
right. You ask the question, you're going to get an answer.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Goes back to one of our favorite ones, like what should I do versus what would I do? Well, as I sit here in my cozy basement. Right?
Yeah.
Here's the answer I'm going to give you. Yeah. Push comes to shove, who knows? And Nicholas, sorry, that was the same question we had before. Here's a question for you, Jim. What do you disagree with Aquinas on?
Astronomy.
Yeah. Physical theory, right? Yeah. Just large scale physical theory.
Some of the views about women we might talk about, right? Okay. But I mean, like more directly, I am very, very unsure what to do with what disembodied existence of a soul would be, right? And the further on I go, the less confident I can say that Aristotle and Thomas are actually up to the same thing there. And which side of that I take is increasingly an open question. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. I mean, I've said,
but although I do think the further on I go, the less I think actually rides in that question too. So. Yeah,
interesting. I know this question wasn't for me, but I'll just chime in anyways. I just think it's really important, and this is why I still somewhat resist labels like Thomist. Sometimes people say I don't do labels because they think they're too cool for labels. Like if somebody asks me like broadly, how do you see the world? I broadly see it as a Thomist, but I'm more likely to point to Father Norris Clark or Jacques Maritain. Like,
I don't know.
I would say Thomistic.
I'm a Thomist or a Hegelian or something. Like I don't know. What do you even mean by that?
Right. Like I would say, like even more for me, like the Thomistic personalists, like really, I think just get so much right. And of course, they're developing seeds that were in St. Thomas. And then there's just a number of issues with Thomas where I'm not even sure what Thomas's position actually is within the sort of inner Thomistic debates, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not enough of an exegetical expert to be able to make that call. Yeah. I'm just not. And so what I say is like, look, I think this is the right position. If that's Thomas's position, then I'm with Thomas. If it turns out that it's not, then I'm not with Thomas. Yeah. And I've said that about like predestination and stuff like that before. So especially if you're Catholic.
Yeah, I mean, so if it turned out I was a Suarez guy instead of a Thomist, I guess oh no, right?
Yeah, big deal, right? Yeah.
All right. And so I honestly don't know what people are looking for when they ask, are you some sort of ist or not? Right. Does that mean, do I accept every word out of that person's mouth? Well, in Thomas, of course not. Right. I mean, once again, you've got like astronomy, right? Okay. So what is it? Is it like a broad philosophical orientation? Sure. But then it's gotten trivial now. Right. So I generally don't know what to say to those kinds of questions. Right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Parker says, you guys have any familiarity with the Eastern Christian philosopher Vladimir Soloviev? I'm terrible with those types of names. I read his Divine Humanity book and really liked it. He tried to argue for the Trinity philosophically. There's a number of people who still try to do that. I have to say, I've never been quite convinced by arguments for the Trinity, right? From philosophy, like Swinburne has his moves and other philosophers have their moves. But I'd be interested.
Is that a formal heresy of the church?
That's something I don't want to speak on because I don't know.
I don't know either. That was in the form of a question.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, going back to Aquinas, he thought that you could not demonstrate the Trinity philosophically. He thought that you could defend it against attacks philosophically.
You could show that it has not been demonstrated as a logical impossibility.
That's right.
He doesn't even say you can demonstrate it as a possibility, right? Because, like, once again, what's a possibility demonstration anyway, right?
Yeah. So, and Lonergan's brilliant on that. So, if you want like good Trinity defenses, especially of how you should understand like the logical issue and the law of identity, with that, I think Lonergan's just your dude. So, but no, I mean, like Swinburne gives like moves from, maybe it had to be 3 and 1 because otherwise you wouldn't have this highest perfection of love without this. And like those are interesting. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to like just completely dismiss them, but I've just never found them completely convincing personally. But your mileage may vary, right?
You could just imagine a skeptic saying, okay, fine.
Yeah. Now what about 4? Why not 9? Right? This or that. Now I think here's the thing we have to be honest about. I think that there is and has to be some deeper explanation of the Trinity and the nature of God. I don't think it can just be some arbitrary, unexplained thing. That would be a metaphysical cost. But there's a difference between seeing the explanation versus seeing that there is no explanation. We might not see
by way of Platonic argument, right? If there isn't an inner explanation of it, you have a plurality. You have a many, right? Do you see what I mean? Like unless there's a unity of account to be given, you have a plurality, right? So then you're going to lose simplicity, right? So there has to be an ultimate account to be given. It is beyond the human ken, right? But
there is a story. There is an explanation, and I think the best you can kind of do again are use the psychological analogies and go to the Thomistic personalists who are going to argue when being is most unrestricted, it's relational and it is personal, right? This is something like at the very heart of being itself, and we have kind of crude psychological analogies. It's like our consciousness, if you're not a materialist, is a unified, simple reality that is relational with itself. I am both knower and known, right? There's these relations of opposition in this one extremely profoundly simple reality. So it's actually like that actually helps. Now, all analogies link to God, but seeing how something that intimate and familiar is both that simple and relational, I think that's a start, right?
And although I think the whole theology of the body thing has gotten way out of hand, there's something to the sexual metaphor of that, right?
Right. Yeah. Good. So haven't read that book, but would be interested in it. So Vladimir,
it's gotten out of hand, but
it's gotten out of hand. Nick says, from a Thomistic perspective, is the Mosaic law eternal? Someone asked that it's written in Psalm 119, the law of the Lord is eternal. I think Nick, you had this up before. Here it is. No, I thought I saw yours come. Here it is. No, not this one. Sorry, I'm going to find it here, Nick, because
Nick's on the game today, man.
Yeah, you're on the game. Here it is. Okay. Is it eternal since it's in the mind of God? That's the part that I was looking for here. What distinctions can we draw? Yeah, so God can, obviously, anything that God wills, he's going to will from all eternity, or we would even say even better, in all eternity. But he can will things that they exist or apply just from T1 to T whatever, right? So since the sort of effects of whatever God's will could be temporal, that's not going to be an issue, right? So I'm not using the Mosaic law specifically. I'm just saying like anything like that, it's not going to be like God could have eternally willed that the dinosaurs exist from T whatever to T whatever. So since, they only occupy a particular from their reference frame portion, right, of time, it is still sort of an eternal decree from God that they occupy that particular portion of time. And I think one of the best accounts of this, Nick, would be Stump's book Aquinas, where she argues for what she calls the ET account of God's eternity in relation to the world. I think that's one of the best that I've read on it to make sense of things like this. Jim, I don't know if you have anything to add.
I don't. These are stuff I don't really work on, so I don't want to.
Yeah,
I don't want to speculate too much. Right.
Lonergan's good on this too, as well. Especially in Grace and Freedom. Lonergan talks a lot about that sort of stuff. Next one comes from IJP. I competed on an elite level in Thai boxing when I was young, and I'm sometimes worried about brain damage. What do you guys think about it, and if it could affect an academic career?
I mean, I have no way of knowing if you got brain damage doing Thai boxing, and certainly brain damage could affect an academic career, or really any career, right? But one, get yourself checked out, right? Get yourself checked out, find out. But two, I mean, why not go to grad school and work on having an academic career? Do you see what I mean? Like, I don't think, talk to your physician. If you have some kind of neurological problem that could be tripped off by too much concentration or something like that, well, then that would be a problem. But you got to get with your physician on that. But I don't see any. I mean, like, I got hit in the head a hell of a lot playing football, and I've done all right as an academic, right? Do you know what I mean? So yeah, that's this. Just talk to your doctor, and short of there being an actual neurological symptom that's manifested, there's no reason you can't, have done all sorts of reckless and fun things in your youth and go on to be a good academic. Yeah.
Floyd is clarifying his question about Heidegger.
Oh, good.
Jim.
Cool. Thank you, Floyd.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jim, why don't you read this one and see what you make of it?
Okay. It's based on a very slight familiarity with Ant, but he notices that the later Heidegger views language and specifically poetry, that being is revealed. Yeah, okay, I see what you're going at here, right? Okay, in an analogous way, he finds that this is similar to God and how God is revealed through Scripture. Man, Floyd, I think you would actually enjoy the podcast we did yesterday with Stephen DeLay, right? Because this is one of the topics there. Okay, so I will say yes. Okay, but it's a very big, pregnant yes. There's a lot to be said about. Okay, and Heidegger the later Heidegger does in several important but like offhanded statements say he thinks that the New Testament Gospels, the original, he kind of likes the synoptic stuff, and the Old Testament prophets are very much the kinds of poetry that he has in mind as possible revelations of being, right? So the later Heidegger is sympathetic to Scripture in that way, by all means. Yes.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Let's just take a few more here, Jim. Why don't you pick one or two that jumps out at you, and we'll and I'll pick a few more here.
Let's see what we got here.
Here's a good one that's just practical, Jim. Colin says, what dialogue should I read after The Republic? Also, can y'all do Nick and McKee and Ethics next? Plato's Republic is blowing my mind. Thanks. Well, thank you, Colin.
Cool.
Glad you're enjoying the series. Yeah.
It's funny you asked about the ethics, because the host and I have discussed this, and I think maybe not the whole ethics, but definitely book one.
We're going to do it. It's decided.
Yeah.
We're doing book one of the ethics.
We'll do book one. And because I think the book one of Aristotle's Nick and McKee Ethics might be like my favorite piece of literature ever written, right? As far as what dialogues read after the Republic, there's no wrong answer. Read them. Just read the dialogues, right? I like the first 5 as starting places, right? The Euthyphro, Apology, Meno, Crito, Phaedo, right? We mentioned the Gorgias earlier. I think it's a very, very good read, right? Very important read. If you want to get really spooky and metaphysical, go to the Parmenides, go the Sophist, right? But there's not a wrong answer. Yeah. Hackett has a lovely,
and we might do the Phaedo at some point.
Yeah, well, we should. We totally should.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, a colleague of mine and I are going to start a podcast where we're just going to go through all the dialogues.
Oh, that'll be an awesome resource.
Yeah, my buddy Andy Jager and I, we're going to start with the Euthyphro, and we're just going to, for the rest of our lives, just work our way through these things. Yeah. So he and I had a podcast called Being Real. That, I mean, it's still on, like the episodes are still on Spotify. But we kind of just quit doing it. But we're going to resurrect Being Real, and we're going to start working our way through the dialogues. So
yeah, awesome.
But as I mean, you and I can't keep doing this stuff too, right? And or you could come on our thing and jam on those. But yeah, there's no wrong answer to it. Just go read the dialogues. Yep. Cool.
Let us. All right, Jim, your pick. You get to take next one.
Let's see here. Okay, let's see. Joshua Raymond says, "Hi guys. I'm wanting to start a blog in the future talking about multiple topics, one of which is Thomistic metaphysics. In your opinion, how much knowledge should I acquire before I start writing?" Much, much more. Right. I think writing should be the last stage. I think we all write too early. And I think the way school and the way graduate school works, especially now, we are all asked to write too early in our careers, and we don't read enough. Right. So I would say go read and read and read and read. And your writing needs to be an expression of your reading. Right. Don't read because you want to write about something. Write because you have read about something. Right. Yeah. A way I'll put it to students all the time, they'll come to me and say that I'm trying to figure out a topic for my senior thesis. And for us, our senior thesis is optional. I say, well, no. That's cart before the horse. You should be doing a senior thesis because you have a topic. You shouldn't be looking around for a topic because you want to have a thesis. Right. Same thing here. Right. Go read. Right.
Read. Yeah.
Read. Yeah.
Good. Little Bit says, will you ever have Dr. Gunter Beckley from Discovery Institute on the channel? He's primarily a paleontologist, though a Neoplatonist. It's interesting, and seems to support Thomistic compatibility with ID. Sure. I'm always interested in talking.
Anybody named Gunter Beckley? I mean, we're on that.
Yeah. Right? So if you guys ever want to, I'll just be honest. Like unless I know somebody or I'm personally really interested in the work. If you guys have suggestions or recommendations, the best thing you can do is have them contact me if they want to be on the show directly at my email, or make the connection via email yourself. That's going to be the best chance, or something like that. Just because I'm so busy with everything else, I'm just honestly just not going to remember a lot of this. But I would do it. I would do it if he's interested and he'd like to do it. I would just need him to either contact me or you guys to set up an introduction. We could discuss what the topic might be or something like that. All right, let's do one or two more. A lot of great questions here on a Friday afternoon, guys. You guys are rocking. Man. Just a comment here. Nick says, I'm going to start diving into Norris because of your recent reading from The One and the Many. That makes me smile to hear that, Nick. Cheers to you. Yeah, One and the Many is just, it's an amazing, if I were to, I can't speak highly enough of that book, but I also can't speak highly enough of his explorations in metaphysics. So just get them both. And that's going to give you a collection of some of his finest essays. Just get them both and enjoy. You can spend a ton of time. And Norris is one of those guys where you the first time you read him, you're amazed. Then you put him away for a little bit, and then you come back to him and you're re-amazed, and you realize how much you missed the first time, and you put him away a little bit. A couple of years go by, and then you come back and again, and you're like, how did I miss all this other stuff? Right? It's just, he's a guy who's just so far ahead of you all the time, and you just don't realize it until you're years down the line that you're finally maybe not as dumb as you were before. If that makes sense, right? Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
Good. All right, Jim, you picked the one to close with here. What do we got?
Okay, so our guy Callum from the UK asked, have you guys do you guys like camping, chopping wood, lighting fires, and camping in wind and rain? You said no off-topic questions. I love it. No, I don't. I have to admit. I'm kind of a candy ass, right? I'm not a big camping guy. Yeah, I know I probably should be, but I'm not.
I'm not either. I have camped maybe all of once in my life. I'm not. If you put me out in the middle of the woods, I will die.
Yeah.
I have no just survival skills at all whatsoever. And a lot of my friends do. So that's kind of what I bank on. If I'm in the woods, hopefully I'll be with exactly my friends that would.
I love the outdoors. I love to be outdoors. I love to go to the mountains and hike and stuff like that. But I have to admit, I want to sleep in a bed. That's just, right. Yeah.
I'm the same way, brother. All right, Jim, before we go, what are you working on? What do you want to announce?
Let's see. I got my presentation coming up at the American Catholic Philosophical Association in November. Okay. I believe I'm going to be doing a keynote at a conference at Yale for the Thomistic Institute on artificial intelligence. Right, that's coming up. I think Halloween weekend on that. Other than that, gonna go have the weekend, right?
Yeah. Awesome.
Reading a lot of Merleau-Ponty. So
good.
Yep.
Good.
How about you, man?
Man, it's been a whirlwind of a week. I've not only done a lot of podcasts, I was on just a lot of podcasts and stuff this week. So I'm shocked that it's Friday even.
You've been pushing lately.
Well, that's why I went and saw the new James Bond movie. We'll chill here for a bit. I'm not going to give any spoilers. But today, like, I was so crammed this week with so much writing and reading and podcasts and interviews. I'm like, Friday morning, I'm just going to go see a movie, right? Because I'm just not doing anything Friday. So I went and saw the new Bond movie, and I actually do want to do a review of it, but I'm not going to spoil anything right now. I'm not going to even say anything further about it. And then. So like I'm just starting to realize that it is Friday, and I know I have the date tomorrow night with my wonderful, beautiful wife, and we're gonna watch men punch each other on the television.
That a boy.
And then we have my son's birthday party on Sunday, and there will be 3 Catholic families there, which means there'll be about 50 kids.
A lot of kids.
So, like literally like 3 families with like 50 kids. So looking forward to that. Yeah.
Tomorrow, my son, who's a sophomore in high school, has a cross country meet in a town just down the road here, and my 2 grade school sons have soccer games, so we'll probably be divide and conquer tomorrow. Like one of us will go to the cross country meet, one of us will go to the soccer games. But other than that, it'll be a chill weekend. Yeah, that reminds me though, talking about the movie review is I want us, if we could, after we finish The Republic, to do a movie review of the movie Face in the Crowd.
Yeah.
I want the final assignment on that is that the listener would go watch Face in the Crowd.
All right. So for those of you who are following along with the Republic series, or even if you're not, go watch that movie. I need to watch it myself. Yeah. We still have to do one because I want to start doing like the philosophy of, and then insert movie title, like philosophy of the hidden life or the Matrix. That would be a cheesy but obvious one or something like that. Right. I'm just about to, I'm rewatching currently Shawshank Redemption.
Nice.
Which is like, man, that one stands up. It's been years and years since I've watched that one, but I'm really enjoying it again. There's a lot of just like interesting themes in that movie. But anyways, it'd just be fun to just jam around on some movies.
Yeah, definitely. And this is from the Sublime to Ridiculous. Is my kids and I have been watching Swamp People, the reality TV show. Right? And this is an embarrassment. This is a disclosure here. We've reached season 7. Right.
Nice.
It really turns bad in season 7. Like, I don't know if we can go on any further. I don't know if we're going to make it through season 7.
That's so funny, man. Yeah.
So if you're doing Swamp People, man, if you get to season 7, you quit. I don't blame you.
Yeah. Well, gentle listeners, let us know like an interesting movie that you think would be fun to just like offer some philosophical commentary on. It can be literally any movie. I know we want to do some Heidegger ones. I mean, there are the obvious ones like The Matrix, but honestly, people can probably predict what we would say to that.
I want to do Deliverance.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Not for the whole family.
Not for the whole family.
Yeah. But I'm thinking of using that in my ethics class. This semester as for the Nietzsche part of the class. Yeah.
Interesting. Have you seen I would rather do this one than The Matrix because I actually think it's a more interesting movie in terms of themes that you could explore. Have you seen Vanilla Sky, the one with Tom Cruise?
Way back when, yeah. That's interesting. Mm-hmm. Another one to do would be Memento.
That's a cool one. Yeah, that would be a cool one.
Yeah. Because it makes a case for externalism of a radical sort. Actually,
yeah, dude, it really does. Just
extended mind. It's extended mind. Yeah. Like his whole mind has been outsourced. Yeah. But he gets around, right?
That's right. He gets around in the world. That's right.
Gets around in the world. Yeah. That's cool. So I'm actually gonna use that for my philosophical psychology class next semester.
That's cool. All right. Yep. So yeah, leave some movie recommendations, gentle listeners. Obviously we didn't get to all of the questions, but we do what we can, and I hope that what we offered was helpful and interesting to all of you. So appreciate the comments. Please like, share, subscribe, and we'll get you guys on the next one.
You bet. Thanks a lot. And recently I have gotten some very, very affirmative feedback from listeners, and I really appreciate it. So thank you for listening. I'm honored that you guys listen.
And thank you, Jim, as always.
You bet.